A big game for Texas A&M and Auburn this weekend in College Station. Will the Tigers be able to go on the road and get their first SEC win of the year to stake a claim maybe in the SEC West? Will Maness is going to join me as we talk Auburn, Texas A&M here on Saturday.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Bryce Koon alongside Will Maness as we get ready for the SEC opener for the Auburn Tigers. Will, it's a long time coming. Auburn's been able to, we'll call it battle through a really weird road trip. They've now taken down two home opponents as well in non-conference play. But man, they turned their attention, and you mentioned on the live show last night, this is a big game for Auburn. So before we get into kind of the topics we're going to discuss, how important is this game for Hugh Freeze to start SEC play with Auburn on the right foot?
It's huge, and I think it's a really good opportunity for him. You know, you think about you go on the road in the SEC and just how difficult that can be. I think Auburn got a pretty decent draw with, watching the first 3 weeks of the season going to Texas A&M. They get some luck. It's going to be a noon kick, 11 a.m. local time. I've been listening to previews from a lot of different people, a lot of different so-called experts, at least people that have been to Kyle Field. I've never been there, but they all are kind of in agreement that there's basically no environment anywhere in the SEC at 11 a.m., maybe LSU. So Auburn getting to go to Kyle Field, it's a tough place to play at night. Auburn gets lucky can play them at 11 a.m. So all signs are pointing to Auburn having some of those off the field advantages, or maybe not off the field, but those kind of extracurriculars, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, extracurriculars. That's a good word for it. We were talking before we started recording. Hugh Freeze, in each of his stops as a head coach, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, and then Liberty, was able to take that team and rapidly bring them back to relevancy in the sense of getting them to a bowl game. Auburn missed out on a bowl game last year. So in order for Hugh Freeze to do that, this feels like one of those games that you got to win, especially when you consider what we talked about last night. Those next 4 games, including A&M, this is probably your best shot to get a win. You're going to host Mississippi State on the back end, that 5th game, but you should feel pretty good about, I think. Hopefully you do if you're an Auburn fan coming off this 4-game stretch. That being said, Will, let's dive into the 3 topics that we're talking about today and kind of look at this matchup. Obviously, it could probably go without saying, the battle in the trenches. Auburn's run game. I had this stat, 5.2 yards per carry for Auburn offensively. We know what Peyton Thorne, you mentioned, it can emerge as a runner, but this Aggies front 7 has a lot of talent. It's just a matter of can they live up to it. So in this matchup specifically, does Auburn have the edge, and if so, why?
You're probably not going to know that until the game starts. Auburn's got 2 injuries on that offensive line, Xavion Miller and Cam Stutz. They didn't finish that game against Samford. Haven't heard much, so you really expect them to be able to go against A&M. Those be 2 big losses for Auburn, just testing that depth. The offensive line is thin for Auburn. Hugh Freeze brought in, 5 or 6 transfers on that offensive line. So whether they go or not, you get an SEC play, you're going to test that depth. But in the running game, you mentioned Peyton Thorne. He emerged against Samford. I mean, had more total yards of offense than any Auburn player since Nick Marshall in 2014. So it's been a while since Auburn's seen individual play like that. And that's a real asset to this offense, to have a quarterback that you can trust in the run game. We all thought it'd be Robbie Ashford. I think Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery thought it'd be Robbie Ashford. And I think Thorne being able to run like that was a big plus. Samford really keyed in on Auburn's running backs. Everybody knows the talent the Auburn running backs have. They really loaded the box, tried to key on those running backs, and that allowed for some running room for Thorne. So that was really good because Thorne shows what he can do running the football. All summer long he was talking about, and fall, he was talking about how he can't wait to get started. It's the healthiest he's been since he got to college. He was banged up last year at Michigan State. He couldn't run. He showed some wheels. There was a couple runs. He really turned it on to get some extra yards against Samford and looked really good. But, just that being in Texas A&M's mind, DJ Durkin's mind, that front 7's mind, they got to spread out a little bit. They can't just clog the middle and shut down the run up the middle. They got to account for Thorne. That's a big one. Auburn, they've run the ball really well the first 3 games of the year. been real efficient, 215 yards per game on the ground, 10 touchdowns, and they've really spread it out. Thorne's got 140 yards through those games. Jarquez Hunter, who we know missed the first game, he's up to 90. Damari Austin, 119. I think those two guys are going to get a ton of touches against Texas A&M. I've said it on the live shows. I think true freshman Jeremiah Cobb, he needs to get more touches. I mean, he's only got 80 yards, but he's got limited touches. When he gets the ball, he is electric. He can really move. He looks really good running the football. I'm very interested to see how big of a role he plays in this game. But Auburn, they're going to do it by committee, and I think against front seven like Texas A&M's, you have to.
Yeah, and you mentioned too, going and looking at A&M's offense, they give up an average around 3.4 yards per carry. They've played Miami. It does kind of feel like Miami predicates themselves more in the passing game with Tyler Van Dyke
Absolutely.
things up. So I don't know if Miami really was trying to, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't watch the game. I don't have those stats pulled in front of me. It feels like that's what Miami wants to do more of. They'll use the run game.
Look, they've got a quarterback in Van Dyke that they can trust to throw every time. And A&M's front seven, they haven't played up to their recruiting rankings, but it's all 4 and 5 star guys that are ultra talented. And, on paper, they have the advantage in this matchup against Auburn. So Auburn's going to have to just find space somewhere, whether it's with the quarterback. I expect Ashford to get a lot of runs, get that read option in the RPO game. And just, I've said it time and again, the physicality of Robbie Ashford at the quarterback position, the way that he runs is a real big element for this team and can really make a difference.
You talked about spreading it around to outside of Sean Jackson, Justin Jones, obviously some guys that are, you're not really going to rely on in this game. Everyone has double-digit carries. And so it's really, you're looking at an offense that spreads it out. Does it concern you or is it a concern? Like I'll say this, for LSU fans, it's a concern if Jane Daniels is the leading rusher because they want the backs to be involved. Peyton Thorne's the leading rusher, even in net yardage, 140 net yardage, the closest you mentioned, Damari Austin at 119. Is that a concern? If Thorne's the leading rusher in this game, does that mean something bad happened, or do you think it can mean something good?
No, I think you look at historically Auburn, the last 2 times Auburn won the SEC, Cam Newton and Nick Marshall, those guys were leading Auburn's rushing attack from the quarterback position. But Thorne, you said he's got 140 net yards. Coming into the Samford game, he had 17. He had 123 yards on the ground against Samford. So I think that's kind of an outlier there. Definitely not by design, especially for Peyton Thorne to be running that much, but it works, and you got to do what you got to do to win games.
And obviously, you mentioned some injuries along the offensive line, and I agree with you. I think this is a game that on paper, A&M's got the more talent. And you said this, I think, last night of the live show. If you just went by recruiting rankings, A&M should be like a 2-touchdown favorite, like over the past couple of years, just with the talent that they've accumulated on that roster. It just has not lived up. We'll see what DJ Durkin dials up. I'll ask you this before we kind of switch over to the next matchup. Thorne in the passing game, if Durkin wants to really just say, look, we're going to make Thorne beat us with his arm, is that a concern? Like if we're just going to sell out and say we're going to play man coverage on the outside and we're going to, blitz 5, 6, maybe 7 guys at a time and make our guys play one-on-one, is that a concern for Auburn with some of the wide receiver separation?
Based on what we've seen so far from Auburn's passing game, yes. Really no receiver has really emerged for Auburn and done a whole lot. I mean, Jay Fair, who nobody thought would be the leading receiver, has been the leading receiver through 3 games. He's been really good. He's kind of a smaller guy, quicker guy, but he's just been able to find space, and he and Thorne obviously have some chemistry. Rivaldo Fairweather's your big play guy on the outside. You're going to toss him the 50-50 balls, and he's shown he can go up and getting that game-winning touchdown catch against Cal. If A&M shuts down the run, I think it's going to be a long day for Auburn. But Thorne, I mean, he's got the arm talent. We saw him do it at Michigan State. This is a totally different offense than he was running at Michigan State. So I think the first 3 weeks, even myself, I think I was overreacting a little bit to Thorne. Still learning this offense. He didn't have the spring. He didn't have the full summer. He was still learning the playbook to start of fall. So, hopefully game 4, he's comfortable enough in the offense and can just go out there and play. I think he's been a little tight, been a little nervous with this offense. Get out on the road, first SEC game, just let it all hang out. If he can play loose, I think he can do a lot of good things with the ball in his hands.
I think also too you got to take into the fact that Hugh Freeze has coached a lot of talented quarterbacks at the college level. In a situation like this, he knows whether Peyton Thorne's comfortable or not. I wonder if they try to simplify it. If they say, you know what, we're going into a road game, potentially hostile atmosphere, all those things considered, let's simplify some of the things that we were struggling with through the first 3 weeks, and then we'll get back to kind of learning some of those things later on in the season. But knowing how big of a game this is, that could be something interesting storyline, I think too.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how the quarterback rotation works this game. I think that's been really stressful on Peyton Thorne, almost trying to play too perfect, trying to do too much, trying to make the big play too often to try to separate himself from Robbie Ashford. And all he's got to do is just make the routine play, make the smart play, make the right read on the RPO. He doesn't have to do too much. I think he's been pressing a bit. And I think this Auburn coaching staff between Hugh Freeze, Philip Montgomery, they got to pick one and stick with it. You can't, move them in and out. You mess with chemistry, you mess with rhythm of the offense. I kind of want to see Thorne get an extended run. I like that he got an extended run against Stanford, try to work things out in the passing game. They kept throwing the ball in the second half with a big lead to try to work things out. But I think Thorne's got to get comfortable, and I think swapping him in and out has been detrimental to him.
Yeah, I mean, especially in week 4, like you're okay with that through the first. And we talked about this, before the season started. I think Nathan King hopped on the show and talked about this too. Was like you have the ability to work through these things the first 3 weeks. By the time you get to A&M, you got to have a decent idea of who your guy is going to be. And we talked about that. It does feel like Thorne is that guy. Let's switch it over to the defensive side of things, where your matchup that you're excited to watch. I don't know if you're excited, but I think that you're saying this is.
I'm nervous.
You're nervous.
I'm nervous.
The secondary against the passing game. Connor Wegman obviously has a lot of talent. You talk about arm talent. He's got it. If he can be more consistent, A&M might be undefeated, if we're just being honest right now. But how does the secondary for Auburn, which I think we're going to talk about in a second, the injury situation, but they got a big injury back there. What does this secondary have to do, and what does it look like heading into this game?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, Auburn's got to be hopeful that Connor Wegman doesn't play against them like he did against Louisiana Monroe. 25 of 29, 337 yards. I mean, if he does that, just chalk it up. I mean, because I don't know how it doesn't matter how well you play. If you let a guy throw for 330 on you, you're probably not going to win the game. But yeah, Auburn's got injuries in the secondary. Keontae Scott, he's out. He had a surgery done on Monday. So he's going to be out for a while. He may not be back this year. And that is a huge blow to this defense. He's been playing that star position, which is really important in Ron Roberts' defense. He helps with alignment. He helps with matchups. It takes a really smart guy to play there, and a guy that's comfortable. And Keontae Scott played a similar role in last year's defense, and was really playing pretty well there. So he's a big blow. Donovan Kaufman, who's been a little banged up, he left the Stanford game early, didn't play a lot in the second half. Expect him to step into that star position. Another guy that's played a ton of snaps for Auburn in the secondary. He's played some corner. He's played some safety. He's played all over the place. Very versatile guy, kind of a Swiss Army knife. So expect him to play the star. The big playmaker this year in the secondary so far for Auburn's been Jalen Simpson. He's a guy.
He's got an interception each game. Like, is that true? Yeah.
He's got 3 interceptions on the year. Auburn as a team has 5. So he's got 60% of them. He's a guy came in, kind of burst onto the scene at Auburn, played as a true freshman in 2020 at corner. Featured a lot in game 1, that weird COVID year against Kentucky. I think he had a big pass breakup late in the game to help seal that win for Auburn. So obviously very talented kid, been talented since he got there. He made the move to free safety this year, and it seems to have unlocked him. Like we said, at 3 picks, making the big plays back there. The big matchup in this one, though, is going to be DJ James on Evan Stewart. Now, Evan Stewart, look what he did against Louisiana Monroe. Where's he at? Oh, I forgot. He didn't play against ULM, which was a surprise to everybody. It wasn't reported that he was injured or suspended or anything, but I was listening to another podcast, and one of the broadcasters of that game was on there and said, yeah, we didn't know anything about Evan Stewart's status, and then he walks out on the field. He's not in pads. He's a guy that A&M's really been trying to get the ball to. He's a big kid, 6'5", big play target. DJ James, a little undersized at corner. I think he's 5'10", 5'11", but really, really good at man coverage. He's been Auburn's best cover corner since he transferred from Oregon. you just got to expect Stewart's going to play with no reports out. Jimbo Fisher not saying anything about him. That's going to be the big one. Another big playmaker in this Auburn secondary so far is true freshman Kyan Lee.
Yeah.
True freshman. I mean, this coaching staff clearly likes him and what he brings. Zach Etheridge, he was a big get in recruiting for him to get him. Flipped him from Ohio State. Saw me against Cal multiple times. They left him in one-on-one man coverage, no safety help over the top. So they obviously think he's a very talented guy. Very interested to see how he plays and what his role is in his SEC debut against a team that's going to air it out. Got to expect him to play. And then another injury guy, Nehemiah Pritchett. He has yet to play this season. Another big playmaker. You expected him to be the other corner with DJ James. That's had to be Kyan Lee. And it's been important for Lee to get those reps, especially coming into this one, him play those first 3 games. But if Nehemiah Pritchett's back, that is a huge boost for this Auburn secondary.
Aggies are averaging 44 points per game so far. You mentioned the competition. They played Miami, quality team, and obviously lost to the Hurricanes. They're averaging 8 yards per pass attempt. Going into Kyan Lee, this is something interesting that I think translates well to the Auburn side of things. When you have young corners, and LSU's got one in Denver Harris that played for A&M last year, a lot of these kids at the high school level, they play just a lot of press man because they're the best athletes on the field, and so they can do that. So leaving a guy like Kyan Lee in man coverage, it might boast well. Like it works for him. That's what he's used to. When you start to kind of complicate things and get into the zone, I think that's where you start to see younger guys struggle to kind of grasp the concept and translate that onto the field. So, I think, like you said, it's imperative that Lee has been able to get these reps against, obviously lesser competition, but to be able just to get the experience. I think that you would feel a lot worse if Lee was having to be called upon to guard certain people in A&M his first ever college start. Like that would be seriously concerning.
It's going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be an interesting matchup because Auburn's going to have to mix it up. They can't just stay man all game. They're going to have to mix in zone. The way A&M throws the ball and how much they throw the ball, Ron Roberts is going to have to mix it up. He's going to have to get exotic. He's known to be pretty aggressive, likes to send rushers. Eugene Asante, linebacker, had that huge game against Cal. I think Auburn's going to let him pin his ears back a lot and try to get back there and make plays and put pressure on Connor Wegman too. So, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch how the chess match between Ron Roberts and Bobby Petrino in this game.
Yeah, that's 2 big names too that were mixed reviews, I think, on both sides of the spectrum. With Ron Roberts getting hired to Auburn, and then obviously Petrino. One more thing I wanted to throw out there about this: Hugh Freeze said, "Look, they've got great receivers," and he's quoted and said that one of the best he's ever seen is Evan Stewart, and just God-given ability. I mean, Evan Stewart has that. Obviously, had a breakout true freshman season last year, didn't play. And it kind of leads to potential injuries. We kind of roll into this final topic here. Look, you've already mentioned Auburn's got some key injuries, not just in the secondary, not just along the offensive line. Well, how does this look? I mean, you go into a game where you really need to be 100% to win this football game. And I don't know what the number is. You might be 70, 75%. It kind of feels like you're just not full strength. Is it too much to overcome in your opinion?
I don't think it is. It's going to be a big loss. Like I said, Keontae Scott going to miss a lot in the secondary. He's also Auburn's #1 punt returner. I mean, if you caught Auburn and Samford last week, Auburn was down to their 3rd string punt returner, and it was ugly. I mean, Auburn, I don't know what's happened. The last 5-6 years, Auburn's had trouble fielding punts no matter who they put back there. And that special teams, they mean a lot in big games. It's going to mean a lot in this game. Auburn can't afford to be back there muffing punts. They got to have somebody back there that can just catch the ball or just don't catch it and get nowhere near it. I mean, at this point, Auburn might be better off not putting anybody back there. So he's a big loss in the punt return and the secondary. Austin Keys, linebacker transfer from Ole Miss. He's still out, still yet to play this year. He was expected to play a role on this defense. And the other was Nehemiah Pritchett. I mentioned hopeful that he plays this week. Be a big boost against this passing game A&M brings. And then Xavier Miller and Cam Stutz didn't finish that game against Samford. Hopefully just some bruises, and they were just holding them out so they wouldn't get hurt even more because, you got to have the O-line depth. You look at that defensive front for Texas A&M, they're big, they're strong, they're fast. It's going to take all 10 or 12 guys, how many Auburn wants to play, to keep Peyton Thorne upright and to find some running room for those Auburn running backs.
Yeah, I mean, look, you want to be 110%. It does feel like just across college football, the injury bug is bitten a little bit earlier on some bigger names and teams than maybe it typically has. Auburn's battling their own as they kind of head into College Station. Well, it brings us to our final thoughts and prediction here. I'm going to roll it to you because I actually don't. I went back and listened. I don't know if you actually gave a full on prediction, which is why you waited until today we did this show.
Yeah.
But what is your prediction? Auburn walks in here. What is the spread again? Is it a
It's around a touchdown.
touchdown? Yeah, I think it's fluctuated, like sat in that
It's
to
gone
7
between
range.
7.5, 7. Someplace I've seen it 6.5. It's right around a touchdown.
So
Which
that
we
being
said on the
said,
live show last night. Very interesting. Somebody knows something
oh
because
yeah,
on paper A&M is a lot better than Auburn.
yeah, and I would say this too, just just as a bystander, Auburn hasn't done a ton to make me feel like they're a 7 point dog in this game. Where at least A&M went on the road and looked competent against Miami. Now I think Miami's a solid team offensively. That being said, I'll throw it to you. Final thoughts, predictions on this game. Who comes out on top in this matchup?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be more low scoring than you think. A&M's going to try to air it out, but the Auburn defense has been really, really good through 3 games. I really like what I've seen from Auburn's defense. They're going to keep the offense in the game. Offensively, it comes down to, can Auburn run the ball? I mean, we talked Peyton Thorne, his breakout year at Mississippi State, Michigan State 2 years ago. He had Kenneth Walker, had a really strong running game, could go with play action pass. Obviously totally different offense, more pro style, really more dependent on the run, but it showed him as a quarterback really needs that running game. Auburn's yet to have it this year. They haven't had the running game. They haven't had the protection so far. Hopefully, first 3 games, they work out the kinks and can really hit the ground running. Auburn needs to get off to a fast start in this one. I think they need to score a couple touchdowns early, have a couple good sustained drives early to quiet that crowd. Being an early kick, they'll probably be quiet anyway because they're going to stay up late Friday night doing their little yell thing, whatever they do. They'll be up late.
They're cult following. They're cult following.
Yeah, they'll be up late. So be a little sleepy. Auburn got to take advantage of that. I think they got to do it on the ground. Auburn has not looked good on the ground. I've said it. Live shows, other videos we've done. Historically, Auburn is a run-first offense. Auburn's got to have a dominant running game to be successful. Just look at the history of Auburn football. That's what Auburn football is. Every Auburn fan I've talked to, everybody's tired of seeing 3rd and short, 4th and short, and Auburn trying to throw the ball. Auburn got in the red zone against Samford and threw it 3 times and kicked a field goal. That's not Auburn football. So Auburn needs to come out and run the football, try to find some holes in the running game. And I think they're going to keep it close. And I'm picking Auburn to win this one. I'm going to pick Auburn to win it 30-27, a real tight one.
Ooh. Okay,
and I think that would get you the over. I think the over is 54. I think that would get you.
I think it's 54. I think it is. Yeah, either 53 or 54. That would get you the
over.
I mean, look, I'm not
Auburn's
against
got
that.
the potential. Auburn's got the potential to make some explosive plays. You're going to have to put up points against A&M because they can score quickly the way they can throw the ball. So I think Auburn's not going to try to let up. They're going to try to go tempo, and I think they can put up 30. If you put up 30 on the road, I think you got a good chance of winning.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's going to take some big plays defensively. Wegman, getting pressure on Wegman, making him uncomfortable. Because, like you said, if he's just sitting back in the pocket, he's going to pick you apart. I mean, he just will, and a lot of quarterbacks will. And we mentioned on the live show, and I want to say it again, there's a lot of opportunities for quarterbacks that are not known, but that just are really not, I would say maybe tier 2, tier 3 guys to really make a jump. And this is Peyton Thorne's chance. Like, this is Peyton Thorne's chance to say to the rest of the SEC, hey, Auburn's got a quarterback that can go on the road and win a game in a hostile environment. So that's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. You said what, 30? What was the final score again?
30-27.
30-27. All
tight
right.
one.
Okay.
I don't mind
that. I don't mind that. A sweaty one. A sweaty one. But no, that would be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch indeed. Auburn, Texas A&M, Will Maness previewing the game here on the Crowded Booth. We appreciate you for watching. We appreciate you for tuning in, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you might be listening to this.
How many
whether
places
it's on the radio
do you put
as well.
this thing?
I don't know. I just input it and send it, and it distributes. It's fantastic. It's great automated AI stuff. And then obviously on the YouTube page, make sure to keep those numbers climbing over 2,000 subscribers. We appreciate that as well. And man, Will's gonna hopefully Will's recapping a 30-27 win on Monday
That'd
morning.
be awesome.
That would be amazing. That would be
For me to
amazing.
pick it perfectly.
But we will see. We'll see what kind of emotional state that Will is in on Monday morning when we talk about this game. We'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.